It's September, and this is going to be the first of 80s month. And there's only one place to start. 41 years ago this month, the legend that is Knight Rider first aired on Sunday, September 26, 1982 at 9 p.m. only on NBC. It introduced us
a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist.
Those legendary words narrated by the late Richard Basehart as Wilton Knight would set the tone of what would become a main staple on television for 4 years, airing the adventures of Michael Knight and his partner in Kitt, a 1982 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am with an artificially intelligent computer that would allow the car to think, speak, and drive for itself. Glenn Larson was asked by Universal to come up with a premise of a computer car after the episode on BJ and the Bear, where the protagonists were tasked with retrieving a car with a supercomputer installed in it. I was aware of Knight Rider in the early 90s after I'd fallen off my bike on Sunday, May 3, 1992. Don't ask how I remember these things. I just do. And I saw the end of the pilot after coming back from the hospital that day, but the show never really clicked with me, per se. It was only by chance when the Daily Star in the UK was having a retro weekend promotion in June 2005, whereby a freebie DVD accompanied that particular issue. It had one from 2 shows each. One was of Miami Vice in the episode Evan, and the other was the season 1 episode of Knight Rider, Trust Doesn't Rust, where Kitt came up against his prototype predecessor in Car, the Knight automated roving robot, voiced by then of pre-Transformers fame, Peter Cullen. It was by watching that episode I got hooked. I must have watched that episode several times before acquiring the first full season on DVD that summer, which had been released for the first time in late summer of 2004. Weird thing in the UK, if you went into Virgin Megastore at that time, you'd have to pay £49.99 for the box set. You went to play.com when it was active, it was £19.99. I think you can probably guess which one I went for. Weirdest thing, the pilot episode, which later became known as Night of the Phoenix in syndication, was put onto disc 7 as an extra feature? You'd think they'd just have it as the first episode on disc 1? So, how does the pilot hold up after 4 decades? Well, time to find out as we turbo boost back into the 80s with Knight Rider. The story opens up in Las Vegas, where we're treated to some great visuals of the Las Vegas Strip and to a band performing Tina Turner's Moving on a River. Within the opening minutes, we can see 2 forces at work, one of Lonnie, played by Sean Southwick, and Michael Long, played by Larry Anderson, but with David Hasselhoff's voice dubbed in to provide continuity. And it has to be said, the dubbing sounds good even now.
But your boss's chief of security is up to his Bahamian bank accounts and industrial espionage, and now murder.
Michael and his partner Mudsie are posing as security for a client and a hotel maintenance worker, respectively, but things go south when Lance LeGault, known for being the antagonist in the A-Team and Werewolf, shoots Mudsie with a silencer, and we see Michael Long along with Tanya Walker going after Lonnie in his Trans Am after Mudsie dies from gunshot wounds. And for those maybe wondering, that particular Trans Am is not Kitt. It may look like him, but it's not. It's worth noting that the Trans Am was the upgrade option on Pontiac Firebirds, in the same context as that of a Ford Focus ST or a Mustang GT. There's the base model, and then there's the upgrade you pay for all the fun extras. What I enjoy about the beginning of this pilot is that the pacing is fluid in that you get a lot of information about who the characters are, and the heel turn from Tanya did catch me by surprise, but it shows you how good the writing was and how good of an actress the late Phyllis Davis was by shooting Michael in the face. Fun fact, that's actually David acting in the shadows and not Larry Anderson. The plot then sees Michael whisked away to Wilton Knight's estate, where Michael is tended to by Dr. Ralph Wesley, played by the late Richard Anderson. Interesting tidbit, he did his scenes in 1 take because of how good he was. We learn that Michael has survived the shot to the head courtesy of a steel plate he had grafted into his forehead when he was injured in Vietnam, which sent the bullet back out into his face, so it saved his life, but it ruined his face. The mask comes off and we see Michael with a new face that resembles Wilton Knight as a young man. This was done to ensure Michael's safety, as if he were to see Lonnie and company again, they wouldn't recognize him. But wouldn't they recognize his voice? The plot then begins to pick up the pace with Michael trying to find his pacing again as he trains by jogging around the state whilst the engineers are heading in and out of the lab working on the Knight 2000. Speaking of, Michael decides to enter via curiosity into the darkly lit lab until he sees a pulsating strobe lit red scanner going left to right and back. After a little amusement at Michael's expense, we learn of the reason Michael was brought to Wilton to get a little retribution. Long is resistant to the idea of carrying on with Wilton's plan for him, of which Devon chastises him for his ungrateful attitude. That builds good tension for someone who's not really into what they're trying to sell him. Not gonna lie, these are two great lines.
Welcome aboard the Knight 2000. Thank you. What's all this? Looks like Darth Vader's bathroom.
We witnessed the first test drive of the Knight 2000 and were given a small taste of what the car is capable of. It's fuel efficient, entirely operated by microprocessors, incapable of head-on collisions, and courtesy of a new substance bonded into the car, is virtually indestructible, and can drive for itself. And then comes to the very scene that no Knight Rider fan cannot talk about. The very last words of Wilton Knight.
You were spared to lead a great fight. Don't turn away in fear. One man can make a difference. And you are going to be that man.
I have to put this out there. You can say what you like about the concept of a talking car with a quirky personality, but this is acting. Tearful scenes where Richard and Edward are just going for it. Portraying a frail and dying Wilton with Edward playing Devon, watching helplessly as his longtime friend is slipping from this world, and the music really helps to add emotional weight to this scene. Then we come to see Michael in his legendary attire of navy blue jeans, cowboy boots, red turtleneck shirt, and black leather jacket as he looks to go after some revenge. We learn that it's not just a new face Wilton had given Michael, but credit cards, driver's license, and a new identity. No longer Michael Arthur Long. He is now Michael Knight. You know, what you're about to hear is a very good comeback.
Good work. Yeah, but he went right through the side of my trailer. Have you been drinking? Not yet, but I plan on it.
The thing that I love about episodes TV movies like this is they knew how to build the suspension and tension combined with the score, and to see the satisfying payoff with Kitt turbo boosting over the truck.
It's about as close as you can get. Tell me about it.
But that's actually a good retort. Also, it does make me question why didn't they just turbo boost over Goliath in Season 2? It would have spared us from this sad image. The femme fatale in Tanya decided to challenge Kitt's bulletproof window and, probably in her last few moments, understood the meaning of hubris. And then we see what became the legendary ending to the first half of Season 1. With Kitt cruising down the Californian desert highway, and I swear these words send a chill down my spine to this very day.
One man can make a difference, Michael. Michael Knight, a lone crusader in a dangerous world. The world of the Knight Rider.
That is Knight Rider. One man can make a difference. You can make a difference in your own life, and you can make a difference in someone else's life. And I believe in those words to this day. The role that launched a soap actor into superstardom. David had gotten wind that the studio wanted to screen test him for Knight Rider. He said, "What's Knight Rider? A show about a talking car." "Oh!" Send a script over. He asked to have the script sent to him, and he believes to this day that the script was glowing. This was heaven sent to him. He was very hungry for the role. Glenn Larson knew he had his star when David added a personal touch at the end of his screen test by patting the car door and saying, "Thanks, buddy. That's what we needed." What really sells David's performance as Knight is that it's a very honest portrayal of a man that had been betrayed by someone he had been protecting and seemingly left for dead. David has often said that the show had the three elements that made him a success, which is heart, humor, and action. And as Michael, he's able to deliver those elements in spades. He has his humorous elements, like just outside of the rising sun.
Social gathering places where alcoholic beverages are consumed in quantity can create an environment in which indiscretion becomes commonplace. Just remember, this is business, not pleasure.
You're about as much fun as a divorce, which is not a bad idea.
I want custody of me.
You know, I should have gotten rid of you before I turned you on. Now I can't shut you up.
Fun fact, it could have been Don Johnson as Michael Knight, had David not met the NBC president at the time, Brandon Tartikoff, on a plane ride, who convinced the studio to let him screen test for Knight Rider. The late Edward Mohair was ideally cast as the director of the Foundation for Law and Government, seeing to it that his legacy was having Wilton Knight's last wish fulfilled. Edward is able to carry across a range of emotions, from awkward moments.
Does it strike you that there's an uncanny resemblance between this young fellow and you as a young man? My imagination, I suppose.
Confronting Michael.
You've just struck a dying man.
And toasting.
One man's dream.
The very character that spurred Michael onto his journey as being that man to help the little guy. Or, as he says it best,
Michael Knight, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
His narration of the intro would continue into its fourth season after his death in 1984. There are actors who have been the one true voice of many characters. Lorenzo Music is the best portrayal of Garfield, James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime, Jaleel White as Sonic the Hedgehog, and Christopher Daniel Barnes as Spider-Man. William is perfect as Kitt. He had the right contrasting tone as the voice of the Knight Industries 2000's microprocessor, KITT for easy reference, or Kitt if you prefer. I say contrasting because whereas Hasselhoff's Michael Knight was all about going in all guns blazing, Kitt would be the voice of logic and reason. Daniels does a great job at being childlike to Michael and wanted to do all he could to meet his needs despite Knight being resistant to the idea of a car that talks back to him. The two have great chemistry and seemingly start to bond after Michael had been wounded via gunshot.
We aren't speaking.
At least I know you're all right.
Then you really do care.
Yeah, I care, but don't tell anybody, okay?
Okay.
The two would bicker throughout the first season before they would start to act more like friends in season 2 onwards. My only major critique, not on Daniel's part, more of the writing, is that Kitt could have been given more dialogue to work with. This is something that would be improved upon as the series progressed. The late Phyllis gives a spectacular performance as someone who seems well-meaning to begin with, but then the heel turn comes right away just as you're getting to know her and you know she's not above double-crossing and industrial espionage and murder. She has a very cold demeanor which is complemented by her sultry tone in her voice that suits the character.
It's a new black Trans Am with a California license lettering Knight.
Pamela plays a small role as the implied love interest as Maggie, trying to gain information for what had happened to her husband after he'd been found dead at the wheel supposedly drinking. Shoop is not given a lot to work with the screen time she has, but she makes the most of it into making Maggie a character to root for. She would make another appearance in the show 3 years later as another character, Marta, in the season 4 opener, Night of the Juggernaut. The late Anderson's role is short, but he makes Dr. Wesley very likable as someone who doesn't say much, but is direct with what little dialogue he has. Edwards is probably the only other antagonist that gets as much attention screen time as Davis. What I like about his performance is his character is down the middle as a heel. He's a neutral moral heel and not annoying, he just gets on with the task at hand in ripping off secrets from electronic companies. If you're making a show in the 80s and you need a villain that can blend into any show, Legault was your go-to guy. He was one of the antagonists per se as Joe Rogan that would make the protagonist's life less than easy in Werewolf, Colonel Roderick Decker as a thorn in the A-Team side, and on 2 occasions he would make things difficult for Michael Knight. One in this pilot, and then in Season 2's A Knight in Shining Armor as Christopher Stone. This is the early 1980s, so everything was done practically. When Kitt is driving by himself, it holds up for the most part, except for some shots where you can see the stunt driver hidden by a cover and his arms dropping down when the Trans Am stops by Michael. I'm not going to be harsh with this, as it was 1982, so they were limited with what they could do. When they did the SG series in 2008, the tech had progressed to the point where the new Kitt stand could be operated remotely, and therefore have the illusion more realised of a car that could drive by itself. Now, for those new to Knight Rider, you may have noticed there are inconsistencies with Kitt's nose cone and dashboard. There's a reason for that. The original setup was done for a 30-minute pitch video to the studio to show how the finished product would look, and the pitch pilot was spliced into the footage they would later shoot to save time and money. While this is not in the effects category, you see a similar thing where David switches between which shoulder he's favouring when he was shot. He jokes in the director's commentary, "I must be ambidextrous." Kitt's scanner is taken from the design of the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, as Glenn Larson never liked to see anything go to waste and he thought it would make a good look for Kitt. Michael Chaffee, who was a former employee with Mattel, was tasked with bringing Kitt's dashboard to life, in which he only had 2 weeks to make. He also redesigned the nose cone into the iconic appearance we know and love with the car, with a more elongated and refined, smoother appearance, and the same could be said with the dash, as he changed from the blocky appearance of Kitt's voice box and cruise modes into the appearance that would be the first half of Season 1, before Kitt would have his voice box updated to 3 vertical reverberating bars instead of the blinking red block. What I found appealing about the dashboard then, and still do today, is that it had a technical look similar to that of a cockpit, with readouts displaying all the information about the car, from oil pressure, water, how much fuel was in the car. Later in the series, Kitt mentions he can go 200 miles on a gallon of gas. And the red digital speedometer was just perfect, especially when you would see it crank up to 3 digits very quickly. And the addition of 2 monitors probably inspired car manufacturers to view feeds from rear-mounted cameras as opposed to looking through rear-view mirrors. And to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Pimp My Ride may have been inspired by Kitt, and Exhibit is a Knight Rider fan. And of course it should come as no surprise, Kitt is a car I want to drive. It should also be noted that Michael also had a hand in designing the DeLorean from Back to the Future, along with some of the vehicles from the idyllic 2015. On a personal note, I would have preferred to have had the future from 2015 compared to what we have now. Every sequence with the turbo boost is an amazing event. I think the ones I favour the most from this is where Kitt crashes through the Comtron truck and to when he turbo boosts over the second. Stu Phillips was the composer for this pilot and the first half of Season 1 before Don Pete took over. Phillips, like many good composers, knew the right music to use for what the applicable scenes needed it for, and in some part managed to incorporate elements of the theme into the score, such as the last turbo boost in the Demolition Derby. Both he and Glenn Larson worked on the theme music for the show. Glenn was inspired by the Delabay March and Procession of Bacchus from Sylvia, hope I pronounced this correctly, that would act as the base of the theme with the da-dum, 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 da-dum. Given that the 80s is seen as the dawn of the digital age, it was fitting that the theme had an electronic theme to it, where a synthesizer was used in making the theme. It was the first TV series intro where it would go over 60 seconds, as most intros were less than that around that time. But it set the tone for what was to come. High octane action. One score I've heard that matches this suspense and intensity is Season 3's Dead of Night, in which Kitt is racing a private jet back to the States from Mexico, and he is keeping Michael alive through willpower and some of the worst dad jokes. Oddly enough, the episode uses stock footage from Night of the Phoenix. You didn't just watch Knight Rider, you felt it. and the music helped cement that. The pilot got fantastic ratings from the Nielsen rating system that saw the story progress with further character development between Kitt, Michael, Devon, and the addition of Patricia McPherson as Dr. Bonnie Barstow as it went into the series. Some real good highlights from season 1 were of Chariots of Gold, where Bonnie became brainwashed by this organised crime group, Kitt was reprogrammed and Michael was left to figure everything out. Second was the confrontation of Kitt meeting Car, the night automated roving robot, Kitt's prototype with all his functions and capabilities. All except one. Kitt's primary programming was the preservation of human life, whereas Car's was self-preservation. The other was of White Bird, where Hasselhoff's then fiancée, Catherine Hickerland, was brought onto the show after David suggested a story where Michael reconnects with the woman he was supposed to marry as Michael Long, but due to his change in identity, this was not an option, but he still wanted her back. The show was renewed for a second season during the filming of season 1's finale, Short Notice. And season 2 has been argued by many fans as the best of Knight Rider. Really well written stories such as Blind Spot, Soul Survivor, Nightmares, and A Good Night's Work. This season also featured Hasselhoff playing dual roles as Michael's twin in Garth Knight, Wilton's estranged only son. Fact worth knowing, David's father saw the season 2 opener, Goliath, and called him and said, "There's another actor on your show and he looks just like you. He's actually a better actor than you." Nothing like getting roasted by your own family. Knight Rider would continue for another 2 seasons after that until its cancellation after its 4th season, as the show just became too expensive than NBC was willing to pay. It didn't help the show's case that a lot of studios around that time were switching a lot from action drama to sitcoms as it was cheaper to pay for and little to no effects were required. The show went into syndication in 1986 and it reached an even wider audience. David was touring in Europe at that time in the late 80s, early 90s and saw that Knight Rider was still popular overseas and thought, what if the time was right to bring it back? Enter Knight Rider 2000. Where do I begin with this? Now, I'm going to be nice. The best parts of this movie are of Michael, Devon and Kitt, and to see the development of their characters in the 10 years since Michael retired in 1990, as this was set in the year 2000. Cinematography was great, actors gave it their best, even Mitch Pileggi, the future director of FBI Skinner in The X-Files, and the future voice of James Gordon in 2004's The Batman served as a great antagonist. This scene is priceless.
I'm afraid he's been recycled.
Now that's just wonderful. You stick me in mothballs for nearly a decade, and then you sell off my parts like I'm inventory from Manny, Mo, and Jack.
Now, this is where the reunion loses several points. First off, I get that the team that made this couldn't use the Trans Am body for licensing issues, even though there is archive footage in flashbacks. Also, seeing Kitt in a 1965 Chevy Bel Air just looks ridiculous. When he was transferred into the Knight 4000's body, Kift, at least it made sense. Also, does anyone get a sense of irony here?
We have nothing further to discuss.
There's nothing worse than a smart-ass ornament.
That and killing Devon off rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. Despite good numbers, NBC wouldn't pick up the TV movie as a series. It would be 6 years before NBC would try again with Knight Rider, only this time it would have 5 talking vehicles with 5 highly skilled operatives in Team Knight Rider. But that series was not renewed either. It was only after seeing the 2007 live-action Transformers movie that then NBC chairman Ben Silverman found the inspiration to revive Knight Rider again about having a weekly show about shape-shifting cars. Prometheus, the 2-hour TV pilot that aired on February 17, 2008, saw many new faces and a new car. The 2008 Ford Shelby GT500 KR Mustang. Charles Grayman is revealed as the inventor of the original Kitt, and now the inventor with the successor in the Knight Industries 3000, also known as the Kittstang. Kitt was originally going to be voiced by Will Arnett, but had to pull out due to contractual obligations with being the voice of General Motors. At the 11th hour, a call was made to Top Gun and Batman fame alumni Val Kilmer. He had 3 days to voice the character, and in all honesty, I think it was the best choice.
Did my dad give you a name?
I am the Night Industries 3000. You may call me Kitt.
Deanna Russo portrayed Sarah Grayman, the daughter of Charles Grayman, played by X-Men fame actor Bruce Davison, Sydney Tamia Poitier as Carrie Revi, and Justin Bruning as Mike Tracer, who is revealed to be the estranged son of Michael Knight. David has a cameo right at the tail end of the pilot, passing the baton to his son, and this was his first appearance as Michael Knight in 17 years. The show got 13 million viewers tuning in to what has affectionately become known as the SG pilot, and it got picked up as a series that began airing on September 24, 2008, 2 days shy of the 26th anniversary of the original pilot. The biggest problem with the series compared with the pilot is that it went way over the top. Whereas in the pilot, Kitt's transformations via nanotechnology was much more subtle, like a wave that brushed over the car, whereas the series had to go with the more mechanical approach as seen in the Bayformer movies. Now, for Bayformers it works, but this seemed like such a contrasting turn for what had been established 6 months prior. That and the idea of Kitt transforming from a Mustang into cars of different shapes like pickup trucks, people carriers, and the most over-the-top attack form mode, looking like something that not even Roman Pierce from the Fast series would drive. Look at these comparison shots between the pilot and TV series attack modes. It's night and day. And don't even get me started on the episode where Kitt faces this generation's car. You'd think after the previous generation where car was a liability, why would Dr. Grayman build another one? The Knight Auto-Cybernetic Roving Robotic Exoskeleton is another 2008 GT500KR Mustang, but this one can transform into a bipedal robot. The build up to the confrontation was fine, with Michael rescuing Kitt from Area 51? Folks, don't even ask. It's a lot better if you try not to think about it. There had been 2 prior fights between the previous generation which were much well thought out, but this ended up being a 2-minute scuffle in which Kitt turbo boosted through the maniacal mech like a hot knife through butter. That and the show was seen as more of a window to sell products for cars and other electronic consumer products rather than focusing on the actual story. Despite coming number 2 against American Idol in its season finale, the show was quietly cancelled. There was a petition that went around of which Smith Cho and Paul Campbell signed and passed around to get the show renewed, but it was never to be. Knight Rider has made many merchandise items made of it, from t-shirts, 1/18 scale replicas of Kitt. I have both of them. Having the show released on VHS, DVD and Blu-ray. There have been 2 great books sold from Joe Hoof, The Unofficial Guide to the Knight Rider Legacy, and an updated version in 2012, Knight Rider, 30 Years of a Lone Crusader and His Talking Car, and to the official Knight Rider Companion, researched and written by the very talented Mr. Nick Nugent. And of course, to the many replicas of the original Kitt, also known as Kitt Prime, Car, and the Kitt Stang. And I would know, I got to sit in one. There have been multiple attempts to get Knight Rider made as a movie, in which Glenn Larson had the movie at then Revolution Studios, and then the Weinstein Company that would have seen Kitt as a Camaro. And that would have been a natural choice, since in the 80s the Camaro and the Trans Am shared 85% of their parts with each other. And at one stage there was a rumour John Cena was going to be Michael Knight. How would we be able to see him? Will the movie ever happen? I'm cautiously optimistic. But as the late Ben Hurst once said, sometimes all it takes in Hollywood is a phone call. Knight Rider has been beloved and treasured since 1982 on TV, VHS, DVD, and now Blu-ray. I'm MJ Knight, and one man can make a difference. Long live Knight Rider.